Peter, we've got a few questions for you. First of all, we're going to talk to you about your early career. So, first question we have from the audience is, what is a professional communicator?
Professional communicator. Well, a professional communicator can speak succinctly and with lucidity, precisely, get their argument and evidence across when required, perform to high standards in all circumstances, in all places, with the shortest of possible time required to prepare what they have to do.
Okay, so second question we've got is, what was the most difficult challenge moving from a high-tech professional job into teaching?
It's flooding back to me now. The first thought was that I had about 2 weeks to put together a study guide, knowing that there would be 600 students out there and never having taught before. I'd been a student before, but only in small classes. So I knew that if I made a mistake in the study guide, I would have lots of phone calls. There was no email at that time. The next thing that I was anxious about was that my first lecture was going to have about 250 students, and that was slightly terrifying as well. So what I did to deal with both those challenges was, with respect to the study guide, I asked my professor, okay, I want to see what's been done before so I can build on that. And he said, no, we definitely don't want anything that was done like it was done before. We want something completely new. So every few weeks I go back to him and says, okay, this is what I've done, this is where I'm going. And he said, he didn't look at it, didn't check it, he just said, you are the teacher, it is your course. And through that encouragement I developed and refined and built my confidence at doing what I did. With respect to dealing with 200 students as an audience, I got together with another new lecturer in communications, now that you remind me. She was a teacher in communications, and we formed what's called a speaking partner relationship. And this is, two of us would just get together and talk about issues that we had with respect to our professional development. And so as a professional communicator, she encouraged me to write the first 10 minutes of my first lecture, which was 40 minutes. So then we went to a giant lecture theatre, and we rehearsed the first 10 minutes of the lecture, just to no audience, and then critiqued that. And then we went back, and she said, right now I want you to do the whole lecture. So then I went and did a 40-minute lecture. And I do remember, to get my students before they got me, I wrote on the board some kind of quote. And what I did, I would write this quote on before I arrived in class. And then I would have my list of students, and I just pull out one name and ask them the question. And of course some of them, they soon learned they needed to start thinking about the question. The first question, I think about week 3, we were talking about contingency theory of management. That there's a right place and a right time for different kinds of management styles. And the quote I had was, life is absurd, contingent and meaningless. Jean-Paul Sartre. And I said, okay, I picked on the student, John Smith, what's the most important word in that phrase? And he just said, absurd? Correct answer was contingent. I was speaking about contingency management.
Okay. And our last question here about your early career is, I was wondering if you could please describe briefly what your previous career was.
Which previous career? Before I joined Unitec, or before I became an academic?
Before you became an academic.
Oh, okay, before I became an academic. I became an academic when I was about 32. I had a daughter aged 2 at that time, so she's now about your age, in London. Before that I was a systems engineer I had done a PhD, Doctor of Philosophy in Operations Research and Applied Mathematics. What that was involved with, I was at the National Physics Laboratory for New Zealand, and the job of that laboratory was to use mathematics and physics and science to help improve the way things were done in New Zealand. My job was to work with the New Zealand dairy industry, in particular the big dairy company, if you've seen it near Hamilton, Te Rapa. They have about 15, 20 dairy factories, and they were losing a lot of money compared to the other dairy factories. They were losing farmers as the farmers were going off to more profitable, smaller dairy factories. And my job was to help this company work out how to turn itself around, work out where to plant new dairy factories, and this involved building a complicated mathematical model run on a big computer, a whole megabyte memory, cost about $2 million, to help them work out where to build their new dairy factories, which dairy factories to merge, and things like that. I got a lot of experience both writing computer code. It had to be absolutely perfect, right down to full stops and semicolons, otherwise it wouldn't work. It had to also be absolutely correct in terms of the logic, otherwise you're making mistakes which could cost billions, hundreds of millions of dollars, which perhaps explains why I am so fanatic on what my first boss called zero defects, getting things absolutely right first time.